So, Claire, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Hi Ed, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you very much. As I've
Good.
just mentioned to you in our little pre-chat, I'm feeling much more energized this year and ready to go. I think it was getting pretty busy for everyone I was speaking to actually at the end of last year. Yeah, I really enjoyed the break and back and ready to go. How about yourself?
Yeah, I had a few days off over Christmas, but I think everybody was feeling it at the end of last year, weren't they? It seemed like it had been a sort of really long and tough year. So I think everybody was looking forward to the Christmas break. And it's really good to be back, though. I worked most of it. I had 4 days off, but other than that, I've carried on working. But I'm really excited about this year. Obviously, 2022 now. We have our first franchisee coming in for training next week. So I'm really ready to hit the ground running this year.
Exciting stuff, and it sounds like you're going to be even more busy this year. So we'll get into that in a moment, because I want to start sort of going through your career before we go into what you're doing today. So, like I do with everybody, it'd be great to find out what your first job was, perhaps after education.
So I actually started work at the age of 13 with a good old fashioned paper round. When the daily, the newspapers were delivered to people daily. So that's where I started at good old 13. First bit of pocket money. I think it was like pennies back then. But so the first ever job I had, which was just a Saturday job while I was still at school, working in, don't know if you remember Adams Children's Wear. It's a
Yeah, I
children's.
remember.
I
Yeah,
think they've gone out of business a few years ago, but yeah, that was my first sort of official job, um,
cool.
which turns out I don't really like children, so it wasn't the job for me. At 16-year-old me did not really like kids, so wasn't probably the right job for me.
Amazing. Do you have kids now?
I do. They're all grown up now, though.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
You
they're good kids. Yeah, they're good kids.
got rid of them. Yeah, they're definitely a handful anyway, aren't they, kids? Like whichever way you look at it. Yeah, perhaps not the ideal first job, but pretty classic. Really, is what a lot of people do is go into retail and paper rounds, that kind of thing. So, where did your career take you then? Where did you start to move towards after that?
Well, actually, I just bounced around. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was that age. And obviously, the world we live in now versus the world, sort of when I was 16, it's a very different opportunities, I think, then. Coming from a working class family as well, the kind of standards that were set for you were not really that high, especially not where I grew up. Um, so I actually just bounced around from dead end job to dead end job, ended up having children quite young. So I was a stay at home mum whilst my partner worked. Then, sort of fast forward to 2012. So I had worked sort of just a little part time cleaning job when the kids were younger. As I say, they're grown up now, but this was sort of 2010-ish. So I was just working as
Yeah.
a cleaner, and then the opportunity came up for me to join a franchise as a franchisee. So it was a friend of mine. She had a franchise business, and she was my friend. So I kind of was like, oh yeah, go on then. Let's do this. So I invested, into the business, bought a franchise. It was like a home help domestic PA type of franchise. So that's really
Okay.
where my kind of entrepreneur type of businesses started. Unfortunately, it wasn't the franchise for me, um, for many reasons. It was really a case of they had your money, so they didn't really care after that. That was in 2012. Unfortunately, 3 months after starting that franchise, I was actually widowed. So I really was not in a good place to carry on working. To be honest, I needed to. My children were still, the youngest one was 10 and the eldest one was 14. So I really needed to be at home with the children.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the franchisors of that business were really, I mean, it was just really a bit of a disaster from the start, to be honest. They weren't supportive at all. They didn't really understand. There was nothing in place for if, a kind of traumatic life event ever happened. So basically I ended up just giving that up. Lost a lot of money. Actually, the franchisors bullied me till I had a nervous breakdown,
Wow.
um, which meant my experience of franchising was actually very negative at that time.
Well,
Um,
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, what a tough
and
set of circumstances to be in.
but,
And I want to kind of jump back to before that. You kind of very casually said I kind of bought a franchise and got into it. You know, for a lot of people, that's a really big step, especially if you've, as you described it, kind of bounced around a few different dead end jobs. You know, to then all of a sudden become a
mm,
business owner. I don't know. I think
yeah.
that's maybe
Um,
a
I
little
think
bit bigger than perhaps you sort of realized there. So how and why
um,
did you talk us through that a little bit more? How and why did you get into that?
I think really the person I was then and the person I am now are two very different people. So back then I was probably, you know, had lived quite a sheltered life and I was quite a trusting person. And you know, it was my friend. So you know, and I'd kind of really looked up to this person as well. She used to run a different, she used to be a franchisee of a cleaning business. And I really looked up to her and really admired her and thought, you know, this is the person I want to be. She's very entrepreneurial. Um, you know, she seems to know a lot of the right people. She kind of has so much knowledge. And I really looked up to who I thought she was. And so when she was saying to me, you know, I've got this franchise, because she left her cleaning franchise and then started her own franchise with a business partner. And I really looked up to her and I thought she was somebody that had a lot of knowledge, that really knew what she was talking about. She was my friend as well. So I
Yeah.
really, I really trusted her and thought, well, she must know what she's talking about. She's had this other previous really successful business. And I guess I just didn't ask any of the right questions. I was very naive. I was very trusting. And, you know, I have advice for anybody who's thinking about buying a franchise, um, based on my own experiences. So I think I went in very stupid, actually. I think I was quite stupid at that time and I just didn't ask any of the right questions. I didn't really know what to expect before I had handed over my money, so that when I had handed over my money and there was like no training, all I got for my 12 grand was an operations manual and a pat on the back with an off you go, carry on and run
Mm.
your own business. So I was a bit like, oh, okay, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. I'd never run a business before. You know, as I say, I'd come from a background of, you know, just kind of bouncing from dead end job to dead end job. So what did I know about running a business? And I tried to ask for help and support, and I just didn't get any help and support. It was almost every phone call I made to them, I was just a nuisance to them. And you know,
Yeah.
they just wanted to sort of get rid of me as quickly as possible. And so yeah, I think that experience really has, it's actually, you know, I'm sort of saying all of this stuff to you, but and it all sounds negative and it was at the time, but I think, you know, everything happens for a reason in life. And you know, going through that experience has really given me so much knowledge on how to build my own franchise. Because when I started my business, I never ever intended to franchise it. I just did it because someone suggested it to me. So I was like, oh, okay, which is a random way to start. But yeah, I think I've used all of that experience and turned it into a positive of what I've done with my own business. So, you know, it did end very negatively. Um, but you know,
Yeah.
you've got to take the positive from every negative situation, haven't you? And I think that's what I've done. You know, I lost a lot of money, but I also learned a lot as well. And you know, it turned out this person that I really looked up to, and I thought she was this great, knowledgeable businesswoman. It turns out she wasn't who I, you know, and I think at the time, you know, I was trying to be like her, I suppose, you know, and be that, you know, sort of businesswoman, and really I didn't have a clue. So
Yeah.
you know, she
It's
turned out not to be the person I thought she was. And so instead of me kind of, you know, trying to be somebody else, I think actually just by being myself has really got me incredibly far in life. So
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's it's a lesson a lot of us try and struggle with every day, is to try and be yourself and not to be like someone else. I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody the other day about younger people. They look up to influencers on social media that are, you know, out there with these flashy cars, and you know, they're selling stuff on Amazon and things like this. You know, they're doing all these entrepreneurial things that seem like a great
Yeah.
idea, but actually they're being set up to fail by a lot of people. And actually, if they just focused on doing something they love rather than chasing money, they're gonna have a happier
Absolutely.
life and probably be more successful. But I guess that's subjective anyway. But I wanted to kind of go back to so you finished with this franchise then, on bad terms. What happened next? Did you then go into starting your own business, or was you?
Well, no, I was actually at home. So, like I said, they literally bullied me until I had a nervous breakdown. So I literally couldn't even pull it together to go to the shops and buy bread and milk. I was really in a very dark hole at the
Yeah.
time. So this was in 2013. And yeah, because it did take me quite a while to get out of that business, and you know, it was a bad time for me. I'd only been widowed like a year when I left that business as well, and it had been really like the worst year of my life, to be honest. So I was just at home, just taking some time out from life, I guess. And yeah, that's when somebody I know who works as a receptionist in the vets suggested this idea to me. So at the time, in Milton Keynes, where I live, we used to have a service that was run as a voluntary thing called an animal ambulance. So it was run by this couple who just did it, you know, on a voluntary basis, and they used to take people with their animals to the vets and stuff, and they used to do some stuff with wildlife and pick up wildlife that's injured and stuff like that. So you know, there kind of was already something similar in my hometown of Milton Keynes. So when the person who I know who works as a receptionist in the vet said to me, you know, why don't you do this? I was like, oh yeah, okay, I might as well. Bearing in mind where I was in my own head at that time was quite a dark place at that time. So, you know, I wasn't looking to take over the world. I was really, I guess, other than my children, looking for a reason to get out of bed every day. I don't think you can kind of understand where your head is at unless you've sort of been in that deep dark hole of despair, I suppose. So for me, it was quite nice to just have a reason to kind of get up every day. And I'm quite a helping type of person. I like to help people. That fits my personality.
Yeah.
So I think to be offering a service that was helping people, I really enjoyed it. And it was hard at the start because, you know, I wasn't in a great place myself. And I did feel there was an element of acting, you know, when you're in your own private space, you can be you, but when you're in the business world, you know, you have to almost sort of put on a brave face, don't you? And regardless of how you're feeling inside, you still have to be that happy, smiley, professional person. And so it almost forced me to be that person. Obviously running a pet taxi, which is, I don't think I've mentioned, that's actually what I do. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than what people think. So, you know, my business has massively evolved. So I've learned, you know, so much. So I spent a lot of my time learning about how to run the business and all of the safety and legal and insurance aspects and all that kind of thing. So I've kind of learned as I've gone along, really.
But I want to go into that in a bit more detail, kind of some of the bits that you've learned and how you've gone about learning them. But I want to go back to kind of what you were saying there about doing something to get yourself out of that kind of funk that you were in at the time, you know, a dark place, I think you called it. Actually, something similar happened in not necessarily in my life, but my sister died when I was very young, and not very young, I should say early 20s. But my mum took it really difficult, found it really difficult to deal with that, you know, her young daughter dying. And so she was in a similar dark place, and found pets as well, actually, would you believe, as a way to help her out of that. So she now works for Cats Protection as a volunteer, and that for her is now, you know, the main reason she gets up every day in the morning is to help others and care for the animals around. That's always been a big part of her life. She's always loved having pets as well. So yeah, I can really understand where you're coming from, because something similar in my world has happened too. But I think it is quite interesting what you said there, that you weren't really looking to build a business. You kind of stumbled across this idea and started to do something similar. So just so that the listeners kind of know exactly what it is that you do, can you tell me a bit about Pets to Places and the service that you provide?
So Pets to Places is a pet taxi service. Most people follow that up with, what is a pet taxi?
Yeah.
My answer is always, it's a taxi that takes pets. So where do pets go? Pets go to, like, mostly the vets. So interestingly, when I very first started, the business was called Pets to Vets Animal Ambulance, because, like I say, there used to be a service called an animal ambulance. So I wanted to kind of keep it consistent for people who had maybe used the previous service. And then Pets to Vets, that was basically where I started, just taking people to the vets. It's actually the customers that have completely built my business for me, really, with all of the ideas. So then people, because it was called Pets to Vets, people would call me and say, oh, can you actually take me to, like, the groomers? Or, you know, I want to visit my friend who lives in the next town. I want to take the dog with me. Can you take me? And I was like, yeah, of course we can. But obviously the name was confusing to people. Well, so we were called Pets to Vets for about 2 years. So sorry, I can't remember what the other half of your question was.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I mean, it's you're right. My first question was going to be, so what is a pet taxi? And
Yes.
I guess my next question around it is, why not just put your pet in a normal taxi? Is that not a feasible form of transportation? Or how does what you do differ? You know, I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, the normal sort of taxis that take people, I mean, I don't know what it's like in other towns, but in Milton Keynes, they don't want to take animals in their car. And to be fair, that's understandable, because, you know, you don't know, the next person to use the taxi might have, like, a pet hair allergy or something like that. You know, animals, when they're not used to traveling, they can have accidents, you know, and if you've booked a taxi and the previous dog threw up in it and you're off out for a nice lunch date with your friends, do you really want to get in a taxi that smells like dog sick? Not really. So just from those standpoints alone, I actually agree that the kind of normal taxis don't take animals.
Yeah.
But there's actually so much more to pet transport that people don't know. And you know, so along the last 7 years, I've actually become the country's leading expert on pet transport, because there's so little knowledge out there, and there's so little information out there, not just for us as a pet taxi service provider, but just generally speaking for pet owners. Like, how should you transport your animal? Most people don't know, just because there isn't really much information out there, or the information out there is actually incorrect. So yeah, we use specialist equipment and everything, so that's all crash tested. So
I think that's an important point that I was going to mention there is,
yeah,
okay, you know, I think most people are, over the years, have just kind of put their dog in the car without any kind of safety around it. And you know, I dread to think that something might happen as well, because they're not strapped in or seat belted. But
yeah,
especially because for a lot of people, pets are a big part of their life. They're a big part of their family. You'd think they'd
yeah.
want to take a bit more care about them as well. So I get where you're coming from that. But you know, having a safer environment to transport the pets in is probably a really good idea, actually. Well, it's proven to be as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? So.
Well, I actually invented an awareness day last year called Pet Travel Safety Day, which was on the 1st of July. And it is just about raising awareness around transporting animals. Now, the 1st of July last year actually marked the 30-year anniversary. It became law for everybody in a vehicle to wear a seatbelt. So that became law on the 1st of July 1991. So last year was obviously the 30-year anniversary, which was why I created the day. So, I mean, we're both old enough to remember the Clunk Click campaign that the government
Yeah, yeah,
did.
yeah.
And it was about wearing a seatbelt. And obviously that campaign has saved, you know, countless lives over the years. But, you know, look how much cars have evolved. You know, we've got airbags and crumble zones and all these different safety features in a vehicle now, which will, you know, it maybe won't 100% stop us getting injured, but it will really limit the likelihood of you getting injured or sustaining sort of life-changing injuries. But actually, if you've got a dog in the car and it's loose, then it doesn't really matter if you've got your seatbelt on. It doesn't really matter if your kid is strapped into their car seat, because if you've got a loose dog, the damage that is going to do is really serious. And I'm actually fairly shocked that nobody before me has actually thought, oh, we actually need to review this and start making some changes. Because I mean, highway code, everyone's heard highway code rule 57, you know, a dog must be restrained, blah blah blah. But I mean, one person's restrained is another person's not restrained.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's open to a bit too much interpretation. And then a lot of what's on the market at the moment, it just isn't even worth, you might as well not even bother, because it isn't going to hold out in the event of an accident. And ultimately, when you're transporting an animal, the same as when anybody gets in a car, you're going to put your seatbelt on, aren't you? You're going to put your baby in the car seat. You know, ultimately, you're going to protect yourself on every journey, just in case you ever were in a car accident. So it should be the same for animals.
Yeah, for the safety of them and for the owners and the families, you're right. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. And yeah, I think it's good that you're doing something about it. You know, because yeah, I think it's important. I actually think about it when I take my cat to the vet. I do worry. I try and strap it in as best as possible, but I'm just like, those little plastic sort of tabs at the top of the carriers, they're not going to do much, are they? And
don't ever put a cat with a seatbelt. Put them on the floor.
On the floor.
That's the safest place for them. Yeah.
There we go. Well, something I've learned for today. And talking about learning, you mentioned you learned how to set up your own business on your own, basically. So I'm wondering where and how you got the information to do that. I mean, just the basic things like setting up a limited company. If you've not kind of been in this world before, that can be a little confusing, right, for many people.
Well, I actually found the right people as well. So I think that's really important for anybody who's thinking about setting up a business, is actually, you know, get knowledge from the people that you know. So I have a really fabulous accountant who, if ever I have any questions, she knows the answer to everything. So I think that's really valuable if you're thinking about starting your own business, or if you've got a business and you're thinking about franchising it, then really speak to the people around you, because that's really what's helped me. I mean, in terms of the expert knowledge that I have, you know, around transporting animals, that's really come from a lot of research, really me setting the bar, actually. That because there isn't really a lot out there. There's really just, I've done a lot of research into how animals have previously been transported, the kind of situations that have happened, and, you know, like reading government guidelines and like best practice and that kind of thing. So I've, to some extent, I've kind of been the person who's set the bar. And, you know, there isn't really anything out there about pet transport right now. So I've come in and basically created it, which has just been from a lot of research into different areas. And in terms of like the business side of things, because obviously I didn't, you know, I've never run my own business before. I've never, other than the very disastrous franchise I run before. But, you know, I haven't been to university. I haven't worked in the corporate world. So a lot of my knowledge has just been that I've drawn on the people around me and surrounded myself with the right people. So I've drawn on their knowledge, and yeah, that's really made a big difference to me. And obviously research, you've got to do a lot of research when you want to start your own business.
Of course. So you mentioned someone said to you, why don't you franchise this business then, so Pets to Places? I would guess you was probably a little bit wary of the franchising world, right, after your previous experience.
Yes and no. So actually it was my customers who really encouraged me to grow the business. So as I said before, we were called Pets to Vets, but obviously there was the misunderstanding about whether we went to other places, not just the vets. So that's it. Kind of all happened at once, to be honest. I'd been going for about 2 years, or about almost 3 years, and then the customers were saying, "Oh, my friend or family or whoever lives in such and such a town, and they've got nothing like this service there. It'd be really handy if they had sort of a pets to," because then we changed the name to Pets to Places at the same time that I decided to franchise. So it was a few years ago now, but obviously COVID's happened and other stuff has happened in my personal life. So yeah, it was really the customers that had kind of said, why don't you do this? And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And of course, after my previous experience of being a franchisee, I was a bit wary to go down that road. But I think it's very different when you're looking at a business as a franchisor versus when you're a franchisee, because if you're a franchisee looking at investing into a business, then the business already exists, it's been perfected, and that kind of thing. Whereas as the person who's got to create the perfect business model, I think it's two very different roles. So I don't think I had the same fear as what I did before. And because I knew that my business was really successful in Milton Keynes, and because of the feedback that the customers had given me, I didn't ever really think, oh, it's not going to work anywhere else, because just the positivity I got from the customers, speaking to the people that they knew in other places, that's kind of what encouraged me to make that leap.
Cool. So you mentioned your customers and clientele there, and they've been, main driving force for the growth of your business, really. What type of people are they? Are they, are there kind of certain demographics, or are they professionals? Are they people, older people, perhaps? What's the kind of typical clientele for you?
So most of our customers don't drive. That's the one thing that they have in common. The business has really changed over the years. So I'd say for the first kind of 4 years, we've just had older people or disabled people. So we really had a sort of, one type of customer, whereas over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've really gained a lot of younger customers, a lot more busy working professionals. It's really kind of changed quite a lot, but my personal passion is working with the elderly and less able people, because I really like to help the customer as well. If you've got someone who's young and fully able, they don't need you to help them with anything. They're perfectly capable of doing everything for themselves. Whereas if you've got, little old Iris, and she might need you to help put the cat in the basket, or carry the basket to the car, or she might need help putting a seatbelt on, or she just wants to chat away to you. Old people are old school. They still like to chat, whereas younger people maybe get in the car and sit on their phones. But I don't allow that. I chat to them. I make them talk. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see how the customers have changed over the years. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, when the service is running in different areas of the country, is to see who the customers are in other areas. Like in London, I'm guessing, we're going to have a lot of busy working professionals, but I mean, that's just my theory. It might not be that way. So it'd be really exciting to see how the business evolves and changes the more franchisees we have on board.
Yeah, I could see almost a babysitting service being part of it somehow. I don't know, maybe, going into the home a couple of times a day or something like that, to make sure that the animals are cared for and looked after. I don't know, whilst they're on a business trip for the night or something,
Yeah, we only do pet transport. We're not looking to add
into that area.
But we do. I would always encourage every franchisee to get to know the other animal businesses in their area. So that's what I've done in Milton Keynes. I actually started a networking group just for animal businesses, so that then you get to know these people. And then if a customer says, "Oh, do you know a dog walker or dog boarder or that kind of thing," then we know who we can recommend. it's always a good idea to know the other people in your industry, isn't it? And it really builds community, and it really builds a positive relationship with your customers as well if they're asking you for your help, which, I mean, this happens a lot in Milton Keynes. We always ask for who would recommend in our industry. So yeah, it's been really good to be able to recommend other people, because we're never going to do anything more than pet transport. That's what we do. But it's,
I think it's probably wise
who does do what in our area. So yeah,
I think it's probably wise as well to be so specialist in a particular area. I'm just flying off with different ideas in different directions, but you're probably right there, and probably why the business is successful as it is. But okay, so in terms of sort of franchisees for this business, then are you looking for people who have particular types of background? Do they need to work full time? Yeah, tell me a little bit about the kind of opportunity for them.
So the kind of people that we're looking for are people who really want to make a difference in their community. You know, you have to be the kind of person who really wants to help other people. Obviously, you have to be an animal lover. That kind of goes without saying. And you do need to be able to drive, because interestingly, we've had a couple of inquiries from people who don't drive. So the job is driving. So you do need to have a driver's license. But yeah, we're just looking for the kind of people who just really want to help. They want to love their job. They want to, you know, are you going to be a millionaire being a franchisee? Probably not. But, you know, I don't want people who are just, I think you mentioned it earlier, people who are just thinking about the money, just thinking, you know, oh, I'm going to make loads of money running my own business. If that's the kind of mindset that you're coming in with, then you're probably not the person that we want to work with, because obviously when you're running your own business, you have to make money, and you want to earn money. Everybody's got a life that costs money. But if that's the first thought that you have when you're thinking about buying a franchise, that probably isn't who we're looking for. But, you know, we've got full-time opportunities, part-time opportunities. If people do live in a full-time area, but they only want to run it part-time, you know, they can take on an employee. And we've got all the contracts we've had specially written for the role of if a franchisee takes on an employee, which just protects them and protects their business as well. So I'm really flexible as well. I think this is one of the biggest takeaways from when I used to be a franchisee, is I think as a franchise business model, there's got to be an element of flexibility. So people coming in, if they fit the criteria that we're looking for, I'm happy to be flexible. And, you know, there's always a solution to everything. So we'll find the answer. And we're really looking for people who've maybe worked within the NHS, who've worked within the care community, who've worked with children, that kind of caring background. Or if someone's come from a corporate background and they're just looking to maybe take it a bit easier in life, that is fine. As long as they're an animal lover, then it's you know, we're kind of open to people from different backgrounds. I'm not saying that's the only people we're going to take. I'm just saying that's our ideal person. So our first franchisee, she's 50, so we're very open on age. You know, in my view, the older the better, actually, because it gives you a bit more experience in just life generally. So yeah, our first franchisee used to be a childminder, so that's like the perfect background. And there's no upper age limit as long as the person is fit and physically able, because obviously there is an element of lifting dogs on the odd occasion. There's no upper age limit.
Excellent. And what in terms of the pets that you're transporting, is it always cats and dogs, or are there some more kind of I don't want to say exotic because that's the wrong word here, but some
furries.
Yeah, other types of pet. What have been some of the kind of stranger types of pets that you've transported maybe?
So mostly it is cats and dogs, to be honest. Dogs go to a lot more places than any other animal, obviously, because they're, you know, with their owners a lot more. So some of the other animals we've taken are gerbils, guinea pigs, birds, mice, rabbits. It is just domestic pets. We haven't actually taken any snakes or anything yet, but you know, as long as they're in the correct carriers, then that's fine. Any domestic pet we don't take. So we're quite often asked if we take horses, but we don't, because that's not. We only take like household pets.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So going just back to kind of your life before being a business owner, and compared to being in a business owner, what's been the biggest difference for you?
Um, I think to go from being a franchisee to a franchisor is huge, because you're kind of the person that everybody's looking to for the answers. And I think this is why I probably have delayed offering franchises, because I think for me it was about confidence as well. Like I know how to run my business. I know every aspect of running my business, and I think a lot of it really just came down to the confidence to be that person that I needed to be. As a franchisee, you're basically being handed a business in a box. The franchisor's done all of the hard work. They've got all of the answers for you, more or less. So I think for me, it's been a steep learning curve of just trusting in myself, really, I suppose. I do know the answers and I am very good at what I do. And it's just been having, I think for me, the biggest lesson for me is actually having the confidence in myself to be the person that I need to be. And I think because I haven't come from a background of working in the corporate world, I haven't come from somebody with a degree or anything like that. I've had to learn everything that I know kind of along the way. And I think that has made it a longer journey, but I think it was worth taking the time to learn all of those lessons in business and in life as well, to get to where I am now and be able to confidently offer my franchises out to other people. Because it's a huge, when you're a franchisor, you're basically asking people to invest a lot of money and time and energy into what that franchisor has created, and that's quite scary when you think, wow, that's pressure. But I'm really confident in what I've created, and I know that a pet taxi is going to be really, really countrywide known, because at the moment most people don't really know what a pet taxi is. But I think it's just a matter of time before I have world domination with a pet taxi.
I'm confident it will be, as long as you can get that education out there. I think people will realize there's it's a big opportunity, both to improve your pet's safety, but also from the other side, as a business owner, to have a lifestyle that's doing something that there's a lot of people that love pets and taking care of pets. So I can see that there's a big future for it, and you feels like you're at the cusp of starting to make it big, right? And I know you're busy with lots of inquiries as well in lots of different territories. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you grow, and I'm confident I'm confident you will. So I want to ask. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I think actually, the last 2 years has really given people the opportunity to really think about what's important in their lives. And I just think franchising is really not just my franchise, but any sort of franchise out there. I think it gives you a really good happy medium. So you haven't got a boss breathing down your neck or whatever, but then you are kind of your own boss when you buy a franchise. But then it's not like you're starting a brand new business from scratch. It's almost like that happy medium, I think, between not being employed and not answering to a boss, but also not just starting out on your own, which is actually really scary to start a business by yourself, because you don't really have anybody to kind of ask. So I think this is a really good time to be joining a franchise now. The last 2 years have shown us that what is important in life, it's the people in our life, and it's being happy. And I mean, obviously I'm going to say this, but I genuinely love what I do, and I just want other people to have the same opportunity and love what they do. And whether that's joining my franchise or joining another franchise, be happy. That's the most important thing in life, isn't it? If the last 2 years has taught us anything, it's just be happy. Do whatever it takes to be happy as well.
Exactly. I'm very much on board with that. So that's good. So speaking of being happy, something that makes me happy is finding fun stories from my guests. And so I'm going to ask you if you've got any funny, strange, or weird stories that you're happy to share with us today.
Probably the strangest one I've ever had was, and I say strange, it just felt quite dodgy. So we had this divorced couple who were sharing custody of a dog. So it lived with the mum full time and then saw the dad like whenever. Um, and so they obviously hated each other and didn't want to see each other. So used my service to transport the dog from where the mum lived, and then I would meet the dad in a car park of like a big field. So he would take the dog to this big field and they would play for a couple of hours, and he'd have his time with the dog, and then I would come back a few hours later and pick the dog up. So you can imagine there's me in a car park with a guy with a van and a dog, and he's handing me a dog, and there's money being exchanged. It just looked like there was some sort of dodgy deal going on. And I was thinking, God, I'm in a sign written car. If anybody sees me and reports me to somebody, incredibly dodgy. So
that does seem like such a strange situation, and I'm now imagining somebody maybe doing that with a child, being a child taxi, like in between two partners, and I bet it happens out there somewhere, doesn't it? These sorts of things do, but.
I mean, on a positive note, though, if you are getting divorced and you do share custody of a dog, then I actually think that's a really positive thing, because the dog loves both of you, and if you separate, the dog then doesn't get to see the other person. And maybe I was actually speaking to a journalist once, and her husband had two dogs who were, I think, the same age, and the dogs were about 5 at the point that they got divorced. He took one dog, she took the other dog, and then they never ever saw each other again. So not only did the dog lose the other parent, the dog then lost the other dog. So yeah, that is so sad. And I was speaking to the woman, and she was like, this was like 5 years later, and she was saying, I've no idea whether my dog is dead or whether the dog is okay. Like, I've never seen the dog in 5 years. I've got no idea what happened. And I'm like, that's actually really sad, isn't it? Because dogs are the new children, aren't they, of the 21st century? A lot of people are choosing not to have children and are choosing to have a dog. So I feel like the rights of a dog should be really the same as a child, that if you're going to divorce, you have to think about the future of the dog, because the dog still loves you both, the dog still wants to see you both, and if there's two dogs, like in that situation, the dogs still want to see each other. My dogs would be lost without each other. So yeah,
something to think about, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I'm not sure if it's going to happen anytime soon, legislation brought in around it, but it's a good point, especially if for somebody who cares about animals, you can feel that emotional attachment to them, can't you? Why shouldn't they be treated fairly, or fairly as per the standards of humans?
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting thought, but I'm wondering now if you've got any proud or inspiring moments that you've had throughout your career.
Probably my proudest moment was in 2019 when I won a Women Leaders Award. So this is, I think it's a national award. So it's mainly based at women, aimed at women who are in like the technology, science, maths, which are obviously quite male dominated. Yeah. But then they also introduced, the year that I won was the first year that they'd introduced a kind of other category for just sort of anybody who didn't fit into the math, science or technology categories. And you had to specify why you were nominating yourself and why you felt that you deserved to win. And for me, I put it down as inspirational because, I have come from a working class family back in the 80s and 90s where being poor is very different to being poor today. I left school with no qualifications, was a teen mum, have never been to university or anything like that. And despite, and then obviously I was widowed and had a nervous breakdown. And, despite all of those challenges and having absolutely no business knowledge whatsoever, I've still built and sustained a very successful business. And if you look at the statistics on the failure of a business in the first 5 years on a standalone business, it's something like 85%. So not only have I overcome all of my background, but I've overcome, like the statistics of actually being successful. So that's why I won the award. And I was actually really shocked that I did win the award, but it was literally my proudest moment to be kind of recognized that actually everything I've been through and everything I've built is being recognized by people, by peers really. But yeah, it was just really a very, very proud moment, and one that will be with me for a very long time, because I do want to inspire other people that no matter what, whether you're a man or a woman, if you've got a dream, then just go for it and don't stop. The amount of people that said to me when I first started, because obviously a pet taxi is a very unusual sort of business and it's not really been done before. The amount of people in the first few years that said, oh, when are you going to get a proper job? And nobody really, other than a handful of my friends, nobody really believed in, my customers, obviously, who are absolutely amazing. And they've been the true driving force behind continuing when everybody's going, oh, get a proper job, or that's never going to work, or whatever. So in 2019, kind of 5 years after I'd started, it was just a really proud moment to actually go, do you know what, little old me from who's nobody in the world has not only created a brand new industry, but has overcome so many obstacles. And yeah, I hope that inspires other people to just go for their dreams, no matter what anybody around them is saying.
Yep, it's great to see that, hear and see that journey throughout the course of our conversation. Really, I felt the kind of lows and the highs as we've gone through, which has been really good. And it's really nice to have that recognized for you as well. So I'm going to go for my final question now, because we're kind of running close to the hour mark that we had set. So the final question is basically around anybody who's looking to buy into a franchise, whether this is yours or any other franchise out there. What one piece of advice would you give to them?
I would say do your homework and think about who you are as a person, because I think that's really important, because we're obviously looking for a certain type of person. And if you're not that sort of person, then you're not going to fit in with our business. And it's the kind of same with every franchise. They'll be looking for a certain type of person. So really understand who the franchise is looking for, because if you don't fit the bill, that's okay. There's loads of franchise opportunities out there for you to choose from. Just understand who it is that you are working with, because I think that's one of the things that I made a mistake about, is I didn't really truly know what I was getting myself into, and it ended really badly. And I lost, I'm talking like 40 grand, not just a little bit. I lost a lot in the time that I was with that business. So, in order to protect your investment, really do your homework, find out what the franchisors are about, find out if that fits in with who you are as a person, because if it doesn't, then just step away, because as much as you might think that's a good idea, if you're not a good fit for that company and they're not a good fit for you, it isn't going to go well, and you will end up losing a lot of money. Because obviously a franchise contract, you're signing up to a 5-year contract, generally speaking, that's what it is. You have to pay to join, and you also probably have to pay to leave, depending on if you sell the business on or whatever. But I think that's really, really important, is just make sure that you are a good fit. And that's obviously said a lot in the franchising world. And as somebody who's quite new to being a franchisor, I think for me, though, I've turned a couple of people down for my franchise because they weren't the right fit. So any good franchisor would turn people away. It's not about the money for me. It's about building a brand with the right people. At the end of the day, franchisors don't want to work with people that they don't really like or they don't mesh with. Do you know what I mean? So
too much of a headache.
And it's the same for a franchisee. Do you want to work with a franchisor who you don't really like, or, who you don't get on with? You've got to be on the same page, I think.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it there at the beginning, but one of the most important elements is to know yourself and know your values, isn't it? Because I think all all too often people jump into things or just go into another job
Like I
without
did,
really
yes.
thinking about who they are and what they want to get out of this relationship. You know,
Yeah,
is it going to work for them or not? And I've told quite a few people over the years that the thing to do is sit there, write down your core values. Just take an
yeah,
hour, 2 hours to do it, because
yeah,
once you know those, right, you can have them on a post-it note, stick them there in the corner of the room, and just make sure that everything you do moving forwards is in line with that. And I think that ties in with what you're saying, for both sides really, franchisor and franchisee, is that it's a partnership that's got to work, but both
yeah.
parties need to know what they're looking for to
Yeah.
know if it's the right thing or not. So yeah, I think
That's
it's
really
really good
good
advice.
advice. That's good advice about writing it down as well, because we've got a dedicated Facebook page about our franchise opportunities, and one of the things that I say on there is, if you love animals but you don't really like people, then my business is definitely not for you. Go and be a dog walker or a dog boarder or something. So I think it's looking at the different jobs within. If you're thinking about a certain industry, then look at all the different opportunities within that industry, because it might be that you are more suited to, like if you're a people person and you love animals, then my business is the great opportunity for you. But if you don't like people, then it's not it's not the opportunity for you, because we're with people all day and we chit chat with people all day. So if you don't like people, you're not going to do well with me. And it's the same with any sort of business where you're working with people. If you don't like people,
Yeah.
like, I think COVID has put us off of people a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We'll get back
Yeah,
there. We'll get back there.
I have to admit,
We'll find
occasionally I've
love.
quite enjoyed being at home alone without the screaming kids anyway. That's quite nice. But
And exactly. So do you want to work from home? Do you want a venue? I think there's so many different franchise models out there, isn't there, that there's something for everybody out there, whether you want to come and run a pet taxi with Pets to Places, or you want to be the next McDonald's franchisee. There's something for everybody out there. And 100% what you just said, that's such good advice about writing down your core values, and then seeing who it is that matches those. That's great advice.
perfect.
I'm
Well,
going to use
Claire,
that one. I'm going to steal that.
go for it, please do. And Claire, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to wrap up there and say thank you for sharing so much of your time with me, and for sharing your story and how you built Pets to Places. Obviously, I put all the links to the business in and all of the show notes and posts. But thank you very much for your time today, and yeah, I look forward to seeing your business grow.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries.